Black waiter spoke French to guest billionaire saw it and left his key with a note. The silence in the restaurant was deafening as André Dupont stood frozen, the French words he'd just spoken hanging in the air. His heart pounded against his ribs as he realized his mistake. The woman at table 7 stared up at him, her expression shifting from surprise to something unreadable. Behind her, at the corner table normally reserved for VIPs, sat Roland Kingsley, the billionaire real estate developer whose latest luxury hotel project was transforming the skyline of their city. André had noticed him earlier but thought nothing of it. Wealthy people came to Le Chateau all the time. Now, however, Kingsley's piercing gaze was fixed directly on him. André swallowed hard, his bow tie suddenly feeling too tight against his throat. He hadn't meant to speak French to the guest. It had slipped out automatically when he heard her struggling to pronounce the dish. In the 3 years he'd worked at Le Chateau, he'd been careful to hide his fluency, to be exactly what people expected. A polite, deferential waiter who knew his place. He had learned early on that surprising people with unexpected knowledge often made them uncomfortable, sometimes even hostile. I apologize, ma'am, André said, slipping back into English, his voice steady despite his racing thoughts. The dish is pronounced coq au vin. It's a French chicken dish braised with wine, mushrooms, and garlic, a house specialty. The woman nodded stiffly, her diamond earrings catching the light. Her dining companion, a middle-aged man in an expensive suit, narrowed his eyes. André could read the unspoken question in them. Who do you think you are? I'll have the steak instead, the woman said sharply, closing her menu with a snap. Of course, ma'am. André took the menu, his face a practiced mask of professional deference. As he turned to leave, he felt Kingsley's gaze still on him, intense and evaluating. What would happen now? Would the billionaire complain to management? In this economy, with his mother's medical bills piling up, André couldn't afford to lose this job. Little did André know that this moment, this single, unguarded instance of being himself, would set in motion a chain of events that would challenge everything he thought he knew about privilege, opportunity, and the courage to be authentic in a world that constantly asked him to be less than he was. André moved efficiently through the kitchen, the sounds of sizzling pans and barked orders creating a familiar symphony of organized chaos. Chef Marcel glanced up as André entered, his perpetual scowl deepening when he saw the returned order slip. Another change? These people, they don't know what they want, Marcel muttered, tossing a handful of chopped herbs into a sauce with dramatic flair. Table 7 changed from the coq au vin to the filet medium rare, André explained, keeping his tone neutral. Marcel raised an eyebrow. What happened? You insult her pronunciation. When André didn't immediately respond, the chef's eyes widened. Mon Dieu, you did something, didn't you? I spoke French, André admitted quietly, ensuring none of the other staff could hear. It just happened. Marcel's expression softened slightly. The older man was one of the few people at Le Chateau who knew André was fluent in 4 languages, French, Spanish, English, and Arabic, thanks to his upbringing and education. Marcel also knew why André kept this quiet. Be careful, mon ami, Marcel warned, turning back to his station. People don't like surprises that make them feel small. André nodded and gathered the bread baskets for his other tables. As he arranged the artisan rolls, his mind drifted back to Roland Kingsley. The billionaire was still watching him whenever André entered the dining room, his expression contemplative. It made André's skin prickle with unease. At 32, André had spent half his life tempering people's expectations, downplaying his knowledge, making others comfortable by being exactly what they anticipated. It was exhausting, but it was survival. His father had taught him that lesson painfully early. In this world, his father had told him when André was just 12, people have already decided who you are before you open your mouth. Sometimes it's safer to let them believe they're right. By the time André returned to table 7 with the steak, the woman had seemingly forgotten the incident, engrossed in conversation with her companion about a charity gala. André served them with perfect, invisible precision, becoming once again the background character they expected. When it came time to deliver the check to Roland Kingsley's table, André approached with practiced deference. The billionaire was dining alone, his phone and a small notebook the only companions at his table. I hope everything was to your satisfaction, sir, André said, placing the leather folder discreetly at Kingsley's elbow. Kingsley looked up, his steel-gray eyes sharper than André had expected. There was a keenness in them that made André feel as though the man could see through walls. Everything was excellent, Kingsley replied, particularly the service. André gave a small nod. Thank you, sir. As André turned to leave, Kingsley spoke again. French, Arabic, and what else? Andre froze, then slowly turned back. Excuse me, sir. Your languages, Kingsley said, his tone matter-of-fact. I heard you speak French earlier. Your name tag says Andre, but when you spoke with the busboy, that was Arabic, wasn't it? What else do you speak? Andre hesitated, his professional mask slipping just enough to reveal his surprise. Spanish, sir, and English, obviously. Kingsley nodded as if confirming something to himself. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small object, placing it on the table. It was a key with a simple business card attached. My office, tomorrow at 10 a.m. Kingsley's voice was neither friendly nor unfriendly, just decisive. I have a proposition for you. Before Andre could respond, Kingsley stood, leaving several $100 bills beside the check. Don't be late, Mr. DuPont. I value punctuality as much as I value authenticity. With that, he walked away, leaving Andre staring at the key and the card with the address of Kingsley Tower emblazoned in elegant script. The apartment was quiet when Andre returned home just after midnight, but a thin line of light shone beneath his mother's bedroom door. He knocked gently. Come in, Sophia DuPont called, her voice warm despite the late hour. Andre pushed the door open to find his mother propped up against her pillows, reading glasses perched on her nose and a dog-eared novel in her hands. Though the chemotherapy had taken her hair and much of her energy, it hadn't diminished the intelligence in her eyes or the strength in her smile. How was work? She asked, marking her place in the book. Andre hesitated, then pulled the key from his pocket. Interesting, he said, sitting on the edge of her bed and showing her the key and card. Roland Kingsley was at the restaurant tonight. Sophia's eyebrows rose. The developer, the one building that enormous hotel downtown, Andre nodded. He heard me speak French to a customer. He explained the evening's events, watching his mother's expression shift from concern to curiosity. What do you think he wants? Sophia asked when he finished. Andre shrugged, turning the key over in his hand. I don't know, maybe he needs a translator for something. Or maybe, Sophia said with the gentle persistence that had characterized her 25 years as a high school literature teacher before her illness, someone finally noticed what I've always known about my son. Andre smiled but shook his head. Don't start planning my corporate takeover just yet, Mama. For all I know, he wants me to wait tables at a private event. Will you go? Andre looked down at the key again. The answer should have been obvious. Roland Kingsley was one of the richest men in the city, known as much for his ruthless business tactics as for his philanthropic endeavors. Meeting with him could lead anywhere from opportunity to humiliation. Yes, Andre finally said. I'll go. Sophia reached out and squeezed his hand. Then you should get some sleep and wear that navy suit I got you for Christmas. The one that's been hanging in my closet with the tags still on. It's Armani, Andre. I may be sick, but I still know how to shop a good sale, make an old woman happy, and dress the part tomorrow. Andre leaned forward and kissed her forehead. Only because you asked nicely. Need anything before I go to bed? She shook her head. Just the promise of a full report tomorrow, every detail. Every detail, he promised, turning off her light as he left. In his own small bedroom, Andre laid the key on his nightstand and stared at it. What did Roland Kingsley see when he looked at Andre? A waiter with a surprisingly educated background. A curiosity, or something else entirely. More importantly, what would Andre see when he looked in the mirror tomorrow morning? The careful, reserved man he'd trained himself to be, or someone with the courage to be more? The morning light filtered through the thin curtains of Andre's bedroom, rousing him from a restless sleep filled with dreams of locked doors and missing keys. He checked his phone. 7:15 a.m. Nearly 3 hours until his meeting with Kingsley. Plenty of time to talk himself out of going. Andre moved through his morning routine with deliberate care, each action a defense against the anxiety building in his chest. His reflection in the bathroom mirror revealed the face of a man caught between worlds, the strong features inherited from his Moroccan father, softened by his French mother's expressive eyes. His complexion, several shades darker than his mother's but lighter than his father's, had always made him difficult for others to categorize neatly. You're blessed, his mother had always said. You carry both our worlds within you. His father had been less poetic. You're blessed if you're smart about it, he'd corrected, and cursed if you're not. After showering, Andre stood in front of his closet, fingers trailing over the plastic-wrapped Armani suit his mother had insisted on. The price tag made him wince even now, months after she'd purchased it. It represented nearly a week's wages, but she'd been right. Today he needed armor. By the time he emerged from his bedroom, the suit fitted perfectly to his tall frame. Sophia was already in the kitchen, a colorful scarf wrapped around her head as she stirred something on the stove. Mama, you should be resting, Andre said, moving to take the spoon from her hand. She shooed him away. I've been resting for months. Let me make my son breakfast before his big meeting. Her eyes crinkled as she looked him up and down. Ah, I knew that suit would transform you. You look like the successful man I always knew you'd become. Andre adjusted his tie self-consciously. I'm just a waiter going to a meeting that will probably last 10 minutes. You've never been just anything, Sophia corrected, setting a plate of crepes in front of him. You have your father's mind for business and languages, and hopefully a little of my heart for literature. Don't diminish yourself, Andre. The world will try hard enough to do that for you. They ate breakfast together, carefully avoiding speculation about what Kingsley might want. Instead, Sophia told stories from her teaching days, making Andre laugh with tales of student antics and literary disasters. I miss it, she admitted as Andre cleared their plates. Not the paperwork or the politics, but the classroom, seeing that moment when a student truly connects with a text for the first time. Andre squeezed her shoulder gently. When you're stronger, maybe you could tutor. Sophia smiled up at him, hope and realism battling in her eyes. They both knew her prognosis was uncertain at best. The expensive treatments were buying time, not promises. Perhaps, she agreed. Now go, you don't want to be late. Andre checked his watch, 8:45 a.m. The Kingsley Tower was downtown, at least a 30-minute ride on public transportation. He grabbed his wallet and the key, kissing his mother's cheek as he headed for the door. Andre, Sophia called after him. He turned to find her looking at him with fierce pride. Remember who you are, all of who you are. With her words echoing in his mind, Andre stepped out into the morning sunlight, feeling simultaneously terrified and more alive than he had in years. Kingsley Tower pierced the sky like a silver spear, its glass facade reflecting clouds and sunlight in equal measure. Andre stood at its base, feeling smaller than he ever had in his life. Around him, people in expensive business attire hurried in and out, each seemingly certain of their place in the world. Inside the lobby, a massive marble desk curved along one wall, staffed by receptionists who looked like they belonged in fashion magazines rather than an office building. Andre approached, keenly aware of his heartbeat thumping in his ears. I have an appointment with Mr. Kingsley, he said, surprising himself with the steadiness of his voice. Andre Dupont. The receptionist tapped at her keyboard, her expression neutral. I don't see an Andre Dupont in Mr. Kingsley's calendar. Andre's stomach dropped. Had the whole thing been some kind of joke, a way for a bored billionaire to toy with a waiter who'd stepped out of line? Then he remembered the key. He placed it on the desk. He gave me this last night at Le Shadow. The receptionist's professional demeanor cracked slightly, her eyes widening as she recognized the key. You're that Andre Dupont. She reached for her phone. One moment, please. After a brief, hushed conversation, she hung up and smiled at Andre. Ms. Winters will escort you to Mr. Kingsley's office. Please wait here. Within minutes, a tall woman with a sleek bob and sharp pantsuit approached. Mr. Dupont. I'm Victoria Winters, Mr. Kingsley's executive assistant. Her handshake was firm, her appraisal swift and thorough. If you'll follow me. The elevator ride to the penthouse level was silent and swift, giving Andre no time to prepare himself. When the doors opened, they revealed not an executive waiting area, but what appeared to be a private residence, an expansive space with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of the city. Mr. Kingsley prefers to conduct his most important business from home, Victoria explained, leading Andre through a minimalist living area decorated with what he recognized as museum-quality art. He finds it creates a more honest atmosphere. They arrived at a set of double doors, which Victoria opened without knocking. Inside was a spacious office dominated by a desk that appeared to be a single slab of dark wood. Behind it stood Roland Kingsley, his back to them as he gazed out at the city below. Andre Dupont, sir, Victoria announced. Kingsley turned, his expression revealing nothing. Thank you, Victoria, that will be all. After Victoria withdrew, closing the doors behind her, Kingsley gestured to one of two leather chairs positioned before his desk. Please sit. Andre complied, grateful for the solid furniture beneath him. Up close, Kingsley was even more intimidating, perhaps 60 years old, but with the physical presence of a much younger man. His silver hair was cropped close to his scalp, his face weathered but strong, his eyes startlingly pale against his tanned skin. Do you know why you're here, Mr. Dupont? Kingsley asked without preamble. No, sir, Andre answered honestly. Kingsley's lips curved slightly. Good, I prefer direct answers to performative ones. He sat in his own chair, studying Andre openly. Tell me about yourself. Andre hesitated. What would you like to know? Everything relevant. Start with your education. Andre took a deep breath, deciding in that moment to be fully honest. I have a bachelor's degree in international business with a minor in comparative literature from Georgetown. I was on a partial scholarship. Kingsley nodded as if this confirmed something. And after graduation, I worked for an import-export company for 3 years as their communications specialist. When they downsized, I took the job at Le Chateau. My mother was diagnosed with cancer around that time, and the restaurant offered flexible hours and decent health insurance. Your mother, Sophia DuPont, former literature teacher at Westridge High School, correct? Your father was Nadim DuPont, who ran the language academy downtown until his death 8 years ago. Andre stiffened. You've researched me. Of course I have, Kingsley said matter-of-factly. I don't invite people to my private office without knowing who they are. Your father built a respected business teaching languages to executives and diplomats. After his death, the academy struggled and eventually closed. You were in your final year at Georgetown then, weren't you? Andre nodded, a familiar grief tightening his chest. Yes. Yet you graduated with honors despite that personal tragedy. Kingsley leaned back in his chair. What I find most interesting, Mr. DuPont, is what happened next. A man with your qualifications and talents serving wine at Le Chateau for 3 years, hiding his abilities from the customers. Why? The directness of the question caught Andre off guard. The practiced answers he might have given about the job market, his mother's illness, the practical benefits of service work died on his tongue. Instead, he found himself speaking a truth he rarely acknowledged even to himself. It was easier, he admitted. After my father died and my mother got sick after losing my first real job, I was tired of fighting to be seen as capable. At Le Chateau, expectations are clear. I know exactly what's required of me and exactly what I'll receive in return. Kingsley's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes sharpened. Security over possibility. Andre wanted to argue but couldn't. For a time, yes. And now? Kingsley asked. Now I'm sitting in a billionaire's office wondering why he's taking an interest in a waiter who accidentally spoke French, Andre said with a candor that surprised even himself. Kingsley actually smiled at that, a brief, genuine expression that transformed his severe features. I'm taking an interest in a highly educated, multilingual professional who's been hiding in plain sight. He stood suddenly. Walk with me, Mr. DuPont. I want to show you something. Confused but intrigued, Andre followed Kingsley out of the office and into a different part of the penthouse. They entered what appeared to be a small conference room where architectural models and renderings covered a large table. Andre immediately recognized the distinctive silhouette of Kingsley's newest project, the Grand Meridian Hotel and Residences, a gleaming structure that had been making headlines for months. My legacy project, Kingsley said, gesturing to the model. 70 stories, 5-star accommodations, residential units, shopping, entertainment, a vertical city within the city. We break ground on the final phase next month. It's impressive, Andre said, genuinely awed by the model's intricacy. It's more than impressive, it's revolutionary, but not because of its height or luxury. Kingsley pointed to different sections of the model. The Grand Meridian will house an international business center with real-time translation services, cultural exchange programs, and the city's first true global marketplace. We're targeting international corporations, diplomats, and cultural attachés as our primary clients. Andre began to understand. You need someone who speaks multiple languages. I need someone who understands multiple cultures, Kingsley corrected. Languages are just tools. What matters is the ability to navigate different worlds seamlessly. He fixed Andre with that penetrating gaze again. Something you've been doing your entire life, I suspect. Andre found himself unable to look away. What exactly are you offering me, Mr. Kingsley? I'm offering you the position of International Relations Director for the Grand Meridian. You would be responsible for establishing our translation services, cultural programming, and diplomatic protocols. The salary is $150,000 annually to start, with performance bonuses and a comprehensive benefits package that includes premium health insurance. The figure hit Andre like a physical blow. It was nearly 5 times what he made at Le Chateau. The health insurance alone would mean his mother could receive treatments that had previously been financially out of reach. Why me? Andre asked, his voice barely above a whisper. There must be hundreds of more qualified candidates. Qualification isn't just about degrees and experience, Kingsley said. It's about understanding. Last night I watched you navigate that dining room like a diplomat. You spoke Arabic to the busboy when no one was supposed to be listening, French to the customer when you forgot to hide it, and perfect English with subtle variations in accent and vocabulary depending on which table you were serving. Kingsley moved closer to the model. adjusting a tiny tree with precise fingers. Most importantly, I saw how quickly you adjusted when you realized your mistake, how efficiently you became what that woman expected you to be. That kind of adaptability can't be taught. Neither can the integrity it took for you to come here today, dressed not as a waiter pretending to be an executive, but as yourself. Andre was speechless, overwhelmed by both the opportunity and the fact that Kingsley had seen through him so completely. You don't have to answer immediately, Kingsley continued. Take 24 hours, discuss it with your mother, but know this, he turned to face Andre fully. I didn't invite you here out of charity or curiosity. I invited you because I believe you are exactly what the Grand Meridian needs. The question is whether you believe it too. Andre's mind raced as he rode the elevator back down to the lobby, Kingsley's offer echoing in his ears. $150,000, premium health insurance. A title and responsibility that reflected his education and abilities. It seemed too good to be true, which meant it probably was. As he exited the elevator, Victoria Winters materialized at his side. I'll walk you out, Mr. DuPont. They crossed the lobby in silence until Victoria spoke, her voice low. He doesn't do this often, you know. Andre glanced at her. Do what? Personal recruitment. When Mr. Kingsley wants someone, he usually sends me or the HR department. She kept her eyes forward, her posture perfect. In the 8 years I've worked for him, he's only personally recruited 3 people. All of them now hold executive positions in his companies. They reached the revolving door, and Victoria finally turned to look at him directly. Whatever he saw in you, Mr. DuPont, it's rare. I suggest you consider that carefully before making your decision. Before Andre could respond, she handed him a business card. My direct line. Call when you've decided, regardless of your answer. With that, she turned and walked back toward the elevator, leaving Andre standing at the threshold between Kingsley's world and his own. Outside, the city seemed different somehow, the same streets and buildings, but viewed through new eyes. Andre checked his watch, just after 11:30 a.m. His meeting with Kingsley had lasted longer than expected, but he still had hours before his evening shift at Le Chateau. Without consciously deciding to do so, Andre found himself walking toward his old neighborhood where his father's language academy had once stood. It was a 30-minute walk, but he needed the time to think. The academy building was now a trendy coffee shop, its exterior completely transformed. Andre stood across the street, remembering the countless hours he'd spent there after school, listening to his father teach executives to navigate unfamiliar linguistic territories. Nadim DuPont had been a gifted teacher, demanding but patient, insisting on cultural context alongside proper pronunciation. A language without its culture is just noise, he'd often told his students. You must understand the people to truly speak their words. Andre entered the coffee shop, ordering a black coffee and taking a seat at a table that once housed his father's collection of international newspapers. Would Nadim DuPont approve of Kingsley's offer? The question brought a sad smile to Andre's face. His father would have been suspicious of anything that seemed too easy. Success that comes without struggle rarely has substance, his father had told him once. The memory brought another question to mind. Was Andre suspicious of Kingsley's offer because it seemed unearned, or because it meant stepping back into a world where he would have to fight to be taken seriously? Andre's phone buzzed with a text from Sophia. How did it go? He stared at the message, unsure how to respond. Finally, he typed, he offered me a job, international relations director for his new hotel, $150K plus benefits. 3 dots appeared immediately, followed by, coming home now or later? Later, Andre replied. Need to think, love you. He pocketed his phone and left the coffee shop, continuing his journey through the city. His feet carried him to the public library where his mother had often taken him as a child. Inside, the familiar smell of books and the hushed atmosphere calmed him as they always had. Andre found a quiet corner and pulled out his phone, searching for information about the Grand Meridian project and Roland Kingsley himself. The more he read, the more complex the picture became. Kingsley had a reputation for demanding excellence and rewarding it generously. Former employees described him as fair but exacting. His philanthropic efforts were substantial but strategic, often focusing on education and urban development. The Grand Meridian itself was controversial, praised for its economic potential, but criticized for potentially accelerating gentrification in surrounding neighborhoods. Kingsley had responded to these concerns by pledging to hire locally and establish community programs, but skepticism remained. As Andre absorbed this information, a question formed in his mind. What did Kingsley really see when he looked at Andre? A talented individual worthy of opportunity, or a convenient symbol, a multilingual black man with an international background who could help Kingsley project the right image for his global project. The cynical thought troubled Andre, but he couldn't dismiss it entirely. In his experience, people rarely offered opportunities without expecting something in return. The question was whether what Kingsley expected was something Andre could provide without compromising himself. As the afternoon wore on, Andre left the library and found himself walking toward Le Chateau. He wasn't scheduled to work for several hours, but he needed to speak with someone who understood both worlds, the one he currently inhabited and the one Kingsley was offering. Chef Marcel was in the kitchen preparing for the evening service, his movements precise and practiced as he inspected produce deliveries. He looked up when Andre entered, surprise registering on his lined face. "You're early," Marcel observed, then took in Andre's suit. "And overdressed. What's happened?" Andre hesitated, then asked, "Do you have a minute to talk?" Marcel wiped his hands on his apron and nodded toward the small office he shared with the restaurant manager. Once inside, Andre explained everything: Kingsley's invitation, the offer, his concerns. Marcel listened without interrupting, his expression thoughtful. When Andre finished, the chef was silent for a long moment. "You're afraid," Marcel finally said. Andre wanted to deny it, but couldn't. "Yes. Of what? Failure, success, or is it that you've grown comfortable being less than you are?" The blunt question hit Andre like a splash of cold water. "That's not fair, isn't it?" Marcel leaned back in his chair. "You've been here for 3 years, Andre. You're a good waiter, reliable, professional. But every time Jean-Paul or I suggested you apply for management, you found a reason not to. Your mother's health, the hours, the responsibility." "Those were real concerns," Andre protested. "Of course they were, but they were also convenient shields." Marcel's tone softened. "I knew your father, not well, but enough. He came to dine here sometimes, always asking for the authentic French dishes not on the regular menu. He was proud of you, spoke of your intelligence, your potential." Andre looked away, uncomfortable with the direction of the conversation. "Nadim Dupont built something from nothing in this city," Marcel continued. "He commanded respect through knowledge and hard work. Do you think he did all that so his son could hide his talents while serving overpriced wine to people who can't pronounce coq au vin? You don't understand," Andre said, a defensive edge entering his voice. "It's not that simple." "No, it's not," Marcel agreed. "Nothing worthwhile ever is, but consider this: maybe Kingsley saw what I've seen for years. Maybe he recognized Nadim Dupont's son beneath the waiter's uniform." Andre had no response to that. "Take the job, Andre," Marcel said firmly. "Be afraid, be uncertain, be whatever you need to be, but take the job. If not for yourself, then for your father who can no longer see what you become, for your mother who still can." The apartment was quiet when Andre returned home, the scent of his mother's cooking lingering in the air. He found Sophia in the living room, a stack of medical bills on the table beside her, and a notepad covered in calculations in her lap. She looked up when he entered, quickly setting the paperwork aside. "There he is," she said with forced brightness. "My son, the executive." Andre sat beside her on the sofa. "I haven't accepted yet." Sophia's smile faltered slightly. "Why not? It's complicated, Mama." "Then explain it to me," she said, taking his hand in hers. "I may be sick, but my mind still works perfectly well." Andre tried to articulate his jumbled thoughts. "What if he's just hiring me because I fit a convenient image? A black man who speaks multiple languages with just the right look for his international hotel?" Sophia considered this. "That's possible," she acknowledged. "But does it matter if his reasons aren't purely about your qualifications? The opportunity is real regardless of his motivations." "It matters to me," Andre said. "I don't want to be a token." "No one wants that," Sophia agreed. "But consider this: perhaps his initial interest was about image, but your qualifications are what convinced him to make the offer." She squeezed his hand. "You've spent years hiding your light, Andre. Can you blame others for being surprised when they finally see it?" Andre looked down at their joined hands, his mother's once strong fingers now thin and fragile from illness. "I'm scared, Mama," he admitted in a whisper. "What if I'm not good enough? What if I fail?" Sophia's eyes filled with tears. "Oh, my son, do you know what truly breaks my heart about your father's death? Not just losing him, but watching how it changed you. Before, you were fearless, ready to take on the world. After something in you closed down, you became so careful, so determined not to reach too high or want too much." She cupped his face in her hands, forcing him to look at her. "Failure isn't the worst thing that can happen to you, Andre. The worst thing is never trying at all, never discovering what you might have become." Andre felt something crack inside him, a wall he'd built years ago, brick by brick, loss by loss. I don't know if I remember how to be that person anymore, he confessed. Then it's time to find out, Sophia said with gentle firmness. Call Victoria Winters, accept the position, and then come have dinner with your mother, who has been cooking your favorite tagine all afternoon while waiting for you to come to your senses. Andre laughed despite himself. You were that sure I'd take it. I was that sure you should take it, Sophia corrected. Whether you would or not, that was the question. Andre took out his phone and Victoria Winters' business card. His fingers hovered over the keypad for a moment before he took a deep breath and dialed. The next morning, Andre stood in front of the mirror adjusting his tie, the same navy Armani suit, but somehow fitting differently today. This time, he was dressing not for an interview, but for his first day as International Relations Director at the Grand Meridian Project. Victoria had efficiently handled his acceptance, scheduling a 9 a.m. meeting to finalize paperwork and begin orientation. His resignation from Le Chateau had been surprisingly emotional, Chef Marcel embracing him with uncharacteristic warmth, the other staff offering genuine congratulations tinged with evident surprise. Ready? Sophia asked from the doorway, looking stronger than she had in weeks. The excitement of Andre's new position seemed to have energized her. As I'll ever be, Andre replied, giving his reflection one final appraisal. How do I look? Like your father's son, Sophia said softly. He would be so proud, Andre, as am I. The trip to Kingsley Tower felt different this morning, the same route but taken with new purpose. In the lobby, the receptionist recognized him immediately. Good morning, Mr. Dupont. Ms. Winters is expecting you. The Mr. caught Andre off guard, a small change that signified a larger shift. Victoria met him at the elevator, her manner professionally cordial. Mr. Kingsley would like to see you before we begin the paperwork. He's in the model room. When Andre entered, Kingsley was standing over the Grand Meridian model, making notes on a tablet. He looked up and nodded in greeting. Mr. Dupont, good decision. Thank you for the opportunity, Mr. Kingsley. Kingsley set his tablet down. Now that you've accepted, there's something I need to tell you. His tone was serious enough to send a ripple of concern through Andre. The position I've offered you is real, as are the responsibilities, but my interest in you began before last night at Le Chateau. Kingsley touched a control panel, and a hidden screen descended from the ceiling. It flickered to life, displaying an image that made Andre's heart skip a beat. It was a photograph of Andre's father standing next to a much younger Roland Kingsley, both men smiling at the camera. Your father taught me French and Arabic 25 years ago when I was expanding my business internationally. He was the most effective teacher I ever had, demanding, insightful, unwilling to accept less than my best effort. Andre stared at the image, speechless. His father had never mentioned Kingsley. Nadim Dupont understood something crucial about success, Kingsley continued. He believed that true communication required more than words. It required cultural fluency, emotional intelligence, and absolute authenticity. Kingsley touched the screen, bringing up another image, a newspaper article about the closing of the Language Academy after Nadim's death. When your father died, I was overseas, deep in negotiations for what would become my Asian market entry. I didn't learn of his passing until months later, by which time the academy was already closed. He turned to face Andre directly. I've regretted that missed opportunity ever since, the chance to preserve what your father built. When my team brought your resume to me during our search for the international relations position, I recognized the name immediately. Finding you working at Le Chateau was unexpected. Andre found his voice at last. You knew who I was before you came to the restaurant. Yes, Kingsley admitted. I wanted to see you in person before making a decision. I needed to know if you had your father's gift for moving between worlds. Andre struggled to process this revelation. Why didn't you tell me this yesterday? Because I needed you to accept this position on its merits, not out of some sense of connection to your father or obligation to his memory. Kingsley's expression was earnest now, the businessman's mask momentarily set aside. The offer stands on your qualifications alone, Mr. Dupont. Your father's connection to me is a footnote, not the reason. Andre wasn't sure if he believed that entirely, but he recognized the respect in Kingsley's approach, allowing him to make his decision without this emotional complication. My father never mentioned you, Andre said, still studying the photograph. He wouldn't have. Nadim was extraordinarily discreet about his clients. It was one of the reasons executives trusted him. Kingsley smiled slightly. He once told me that success leaves clues but never needs to announce itself. I found that to be true in business and in life. The screen went dark, and Kingsley extended his hand. So, now that all cards are on the table, welcome to the Grand Meridian, Andre. I expect you to exceed even your father's high standards. As Andre shook Kingsley's hand, he felt the weight of expectation settling onto his shoulders, not just Kingsley's, but his father's legacy, his mother's hopes, and most pressingly, his own long-suppressed ambitions. Victoria was waiting outside to guide him through orientation, her tablet ready with forms requiring signatures. As they walked toward the HR department, she gave Andre a sidelong glance. "He told you about your father," she said. It wasn't a question. "You knew?" Andre asked. "I know everything that's relevant to Mr. Kingsley's business," Victoria replied matter-of-factly, "including the fact that he's been following your career since Georgetown." This new piece of information stopped Andre in his tracks. "He's been what?" Victoria realized she'd said too much and tried to backtrack. "Let's focus on the paperwork for now, shall we? There will be plenty of time for history lessons later." But Andre wasn't willing to let it go. "How long has he been watching me?" Victoria sighed, recognizing his determination. "Mr. Kingsley makes it a point to track promising talents, especially those with personal connections to people he respects. When your father died during your senior year, Mr. Kingsley asked me to keep an eye on your progress. He was concerned about how the loss might affect your path. So he's been monitoring me like some kind of project." Andre felt a flush of anger and embarrassment. Had his struggles, his setbacks, his years at Le Chateau all been observed and noted? "It wasn't like that," Victoria said, her professional demeanor softening slightly. "He respected your father immensely. When we learned you'd taken the position at Le Chateau instead of pursuing a career in international business, Mr. Kingsley was disappointed but not surprised. Grief changes trajectories." Andre tried to process what this meant. "And the Grand Meridian position, was it created for me?" "The position is legitimate," Victoria assured him. "But yes, when it opened, Mr. Kingsley specifically requested your resume be considered, despite the gap in your corporate experience." They had reached the HR department, but Andre made no move to enter. "I need a minute." Victoria nodded in understanding. "Take 5. I'll tell them you're reviewing the contract details." She handed him a folder. "For what it's worth, Mr. DuPont, Mr. Kingsley doesn't do charity hires. If he didn't believe you were capable, no amount of sentiment would have led to that offer." Left alone in the hallway, Andre opened the folder to find not HR paperwork but a handwritten letter on Kingsley's personal stationery. The elegant, precise handwriting was instantly familiar. It was his father's. Dated just a month before Nadam's unexpected heart attack, the letter was addressed to Kingsley. "Roland, thank you for your generous offer regarding Andre. While I appreciate your interest in my son's future, I must decline. Andre must find his own path, free from the shadows of either his father's expectations or the well-intentioned assistance of my successful friends. The greatest gift we can give our children is not protection from struggle, but faith in their ability to overcome it on their own terms. Andre has a brilliant mind and a good heart. These will serve him better than any connection I might provide. Should your paths cross naturally in the years to come, I trust you will evaluate him on his merits alone, as I have always tried to do." With respect and gratitude, Nadam DuPont Andre read the letter twice, his vision blurring with unshed tears. It was so characteristically his father, proud, principled, determined that his son should succeed or fail on his own strengths. Had Kingsley honored that request, he'd admitted to following Andre's career, even to specifically requesting his resume. Yet he'd waited years before making contact, approaching Andre only after witnessing his abilities firsthand. The complexity of the situation made Andre's head spin. Was this opportunity tainted by Kingsley's connection to his father, or was it somehow more meaningful because of it? Victoria returned, her expression questioning. Andre carefully refolded the letter and placed it back in the folder. "I'm ready," he said, his decision made. He would accept this position and the history that came with it. He would honor his father not by rejecting help he hadn't sought, but by proving himself worthy of the opportunity, by becoming the man both his father and Kingsley believed he could be. As they entered the HR department, a new question formed in Andre's mind. What would he build with this unexpected second chance? The next 6 weeks passed in a blur of meetings, presentations, and late nights. Andre's role as International Relations Director required him to develop protocols and programs from scratch, drawing on his education and his father's teachings in equal measure. The Grand Meridian's International Business Center was taking shape, not just as a physical space, but as a concept designed to make global commerce and cultural exchange more fluid. Andre found himself leading a team of translators, cultural consultants, and hospitality specialists, his natural diplomatic abilities emerging as he navigated different personalities and perspectives. Kingsley was a demanding but fair boss, expecting excellence but providing the resources necessary to achieve it. He rarely mentioned Nadim Dupont, allowing André to establish himself on his own merits. Still, André sometimes caught Kingsley watching him with an evaluative expression that seemed to compare father and son. At home, Sophia thrived on André's success, her health showing modest improvements as the premium insurance from his new position provided access to experimental treatments. She decorated one wall of their living room with André's business cards, press clippings about the Grand Meridian, and a photograph of André with his team at the project's most recent milestone celebration. "My wall of pride," she called it, often sitting before it during her better moments, smiling at the evidence of her son's rising star. Tonight, André sat at his desk in his new office on the 40th floor of Kingsley Tower, reviewing translation service proposals. The sun had set hours ago, but he was determined to finish before heading home. A knock at his door drew his attention. "Come in," he called, expecting Victoria with the budget reports she'd promised earlier. Instead, Chef Marcel entered, looking distinctly uncomfortable in a suit rather than his usual white chef's attire. "Marcel," André rose to greet him, genuinely pleased by the unexpected visit. "What brings you here? Your mother invited me to dinner tomorrow," Marcel explained, accepting André's handshake. "I thought I should deliver my answer in person and see this grand office I've been hearing about." He glanced around approvingly. "Not bad for a waiter," André laughed. "I still have moments where I expect someone to ask me to take their drink order." He gestured for Marcel to sit. "What's your answer for my mother? She's been planning this dinner party for weeks." "Of course I'll come," Marcel said. "I wouldn't miss it. That woman makes a tagine that puts my French training to shame, though I'd never admit it to anyone else." They chatted about Le Chateau, with Marcel sharing restaurant gossip and André providing updates on the Grand Meridian. As the conversation flowed, André realized how much he'd missed the chef's blunt wisdom. "You seem different," Marcel observed after a while. "More yourself." André considered this. "I feel different, less like I'm playing a role and more like I'm becoming who I was meant to be." He gestured to a framed photograph on his desk, himself as a child sitting on his father's shoulders, both laughing at the camera. "I think my father would approve." Marcel nodded sagely. "He would. Though he'd probably tell you to strengthen the section on cultural sensitivity in your training manual." He tapped a document on André's desk. "I took a peek while you were getting coffee. The language is too corporate, not enough heart." André blinked in surprise. "You read Arabic?" "I've picked up a few things over the years," Marcel said with a shrug. "Your father used to come to Le Chateau to practice with me. My Arabic was terrible, but he was patient." André shook his head in wonder. "Everyone seems to have known my father in some way." "Nadim Dupont cast a long shadow," Marcel agreed, "but you're beginning to cast your own." He stood, straightening his unfamiliar suit. "I should go early morning prep tomorrow and now a dinner party to prepare for." As André walked Marcel to the elevator, the chef paused before entering. "There's something else I came to tell you. That woman from that night, the one who changed her order when you spoke French. What about her?" André asked, surprised by the mention of that pivotal moment. "She came back last week, asked if you still worked there." Marcel's expression was difficult to read. "When I told her you'd moved on to better things, she seemed genuinely pleased, said something about being part of your story. Strange, no?" André felt an odd chill. "Did she leave a name?" Marcel shook his head. "No, but she left this." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small envelope, handing it to André. "Said you'd understand." After Marcel left, André opened the envelope in the privacy of his office. Inside was a business card, Victoria Winters, executive assistant to Roland Kingsley, and a handwritten note. "Sometimes the universe needs a little help rearranging itself. Some people call it fate. I call it strategic opportunity management. You were wasted at that restaurant. The woman who couldn't pronounce coq au vin on purpose. P.S. Mr. Kingsley doesn't know. This was my own initiative. I worked with your father, too." André stared at the note in disbelief. The woman at table 7 hadn't been a random customer struggling with French pronunciation. She'd been Victoria Winters in disguise, deliberately creating a situation where André would reveal his French fluency while Kingsley was watching. The realization that his life-changing opportunity had been engineered so carefully left André feeling both manipulated and strangely moved. Victoria had orchestrated a moment of authenticity, setting the stage but leaving André to play his true self rather than a role. He tucked the note into his desk drawer, unsure whether to confront Victoria or thank her. Perhaps both. For now, he turned back to his work, determined to prove that regardless of how this opportunity had come about, he was the right person to make the most of it. The dinner party at Andre and Sophia's apartment was intimate but lively. Chef Marcel, Victoria, who had accepted Andre's invitation with a knowing smile. Two of Andre's team members from the Grand Meridian, and Roland Kingsley himself, who had surprised everyone by actually attending. Sophia had outdone herself with the meal, her strength bolstered by excitement and the increasingly effective treatments. The dining table, expanded with a borrowed leaf, groaned under the weight of Moroccan and French dishes that represented both sides of the DuPont heritage. Conversation flowed as freely as the wine, shifting effortlessly between English, French, and occasional phrases in Arabic as the multilingual group found common ground. Andre watched his mother laugh at something Victoria said, her eyes bright with a vitality he hadn't seen in months. "Your mother is remarkable," Kingsley commented quietly, joining Andre by the window while the others debated the merits of French versus Moroccan pastry. "I see where you get your resilience." "She's the strongest person I know," Andre agreed, his gaze fond. Kingsley nodded thoughtfully. "The Grand Meridian opens in 8 months, the International Business Center in 10. We're ahead of schedule and under budget, thanks in no small part to your work." "Thank you, sir," Andre said, still not entirely comfortable with Kingsley's praise despite weeks of working together. "I'm not telling you this to compliment you, though you deserve it," Kingsley said. "I'm telling you because I'll be announcing the full executive team to the press next week, and I want to prepare you for the attention that will bring." Andre tensed slightly. "Attention! You're young for a director-level position, and your background is interesting. The media will notice." Kingsley sipped his wine. "Some will suggest you got the position because of your demographic profile rather than your abilities. Others will dig into your history at Le Chateau and question your qualifications." The familiar anxiety rose in Andre's chest. "And what would you like me to tell them?" Kingsley's expression was serious. "The truth, that you earned this position through a combination of education, ability, and the unique perspective that comes from understanding multiple worlds. That you bring something to the Grand Meridian that no other candidate could, a genuine commitment to creating spaces where different cultures can engage authentically." He paused, choosing his next words carefully. "Your father taught me that true success comes not from hiding who we are, but from transforming what others might see as liabilities into our greatest strengths." He was proud of his heritage, his knowledge, his ability to move between cultures. He never apologized for being exactly who he was. Andre thought about the waiter who had hidden his French fluency, who had made himself smaller to fit other people's expectations. That man seemed increasingly distant now, like a character in someone else's story. "I won't apologize either," Andre said with quiet determination. Kingsley smiled, a genuine expression that transformed his usually stern features. "Good. Because I'm also planning to announce that the International Business Center will be named the Nadim DuPont Global Exchange. With your permission, of course." Emotion tightened Andre's throat, making speech momentarily impossible. Kingsley respected his silence, giving him time to compose himself. "He would be honored," Andre finally managed. "As am I." Across the room, Sophia caught his eye, her expression questioning. Andre gave her a reassuring nod, and she smiled before returning to her conversation with Marcel and Victoria. "There's something else," Kingsley said, his voice lowering. "Something I've been considering for some time. The Grand Meridian is only the beginning of a larger international initiative. I'm establishing a foundation to support education and cultural exchange programs globally, with a particular focus on creating opportunities for talented individuals from diverse backgrounds." Andre listened, sensing that Kingsley was building to something significant. "I'd like you to consider eventually transitioning from the Grand Meridian to become the executive director of this foundation. Not immediately, the hotel needs you for at least 2 years. But after that, I believe you'd be the perfect person to shape the foundation's direction and impact." The offer was so unexpected that Andre couldn't formulate a response. Kingsley seemed to understand, placing a hand briefly on his shoulder. "No need to answer now. Consider it a long-term possibility, a next chapter when you're ready to write it." He glanced back at the dinner table. "For tonight, enjoy this moment. You've earned it." As Kingsley rejoined the group, Andre remained by the window, watching the city lights and reflecting on the extraordinary journey that had brought him here. From a waiter hiding his abilities to a director being offered the chance to create opportunities for others like himself, the transformation seemed almost unbelievable. Yet here he was, surrounded by people who saw him fully, his mother, who had always believed in him, Marcel, who had pushed him to reach higher, Victoria, who had engineered the moment that changed everything, and Kingsley, who had recognized in Andre something worth investing in, worth building upon. The woman at table 7 had been right, Andre realized. Sometimes the universe needed help rearranging itself. Sometimes it took a single moment of authenticity, a few French words spoken without thought or pretense to set a new course. Sophia called him back to the table for dessert, and Andre rejoined the group, taking his seat between his mother and Kingsley. As the conversation and laughter continued around him, he felt a sense of rightness, of belonging not just to this moment, but to the future it promised, a future where he could finally be all of who he was meant to be. In that moment, Andre understood that the key Kingsley had given him that night at Le Chateau had unlocked more than an office door. It had unlocked the person he'd kept hidden for too long from others, and more importantly, from himself. If you enjoyed today's story, make sure to subscribe to our channel for more thought-provoking narratives that challenge assumptions and celebrate authentic human connections. We at Persifistories believe that every person has hidden depths waiting to be recognized, and we're committed to sharing stories that illuminate the beauty of being fully seen and valued. What moment in your life required you to step into your authentic self? Share your thoughts in the comments below and join our community of storytellers and truth seekers who believe in the power of genuine human connection. Remember, sometimes the universe needs a little help rearranging itself, and that begins with the courage to be exactly who you are.